Yeah, let us read again those few lines which we did last time and try to continue further. We had a description of Savitri arriving at the hermitage where she had met Satyavan for the first time a few weeks earlier. The poet introduces the description in a very significant manner, in a very loaded manner, full of occult and spiritual connotations. He says, the past receded and the future neared. At once, we have here not only the continuation of the storyline that Savitri is leaving back her palace, her Madra, her Alakananda, her parents, and all those beautiful things there, her intimate friends, her inmates, she is leaving them behind. And in that sense, the past receded. And the future neared. The future, of course, would mean living now with Satyavan in the hermitages and also getting ready to meet the eventuality made known to her by Narad that 1 year after the marriage, Satyavan will die. This is a destined death, and Savitri has to prepare herself to meet that death and conquer death. So when it says the future neared, it also connotes immediately the sense of the conquest of death which is going to happen in this hermitage, in this particular place. Past receded. It is not only the past 15-20 years of Savitri staying in Madura, maybe 25 years, because she has become a fully grown girl to get married. So maybe between 20 and 25. So it is not that past which is receding, but the past of the entire earth, the accumulated karmas, the occult difficulties which are being faced in the process of evolution, and of the possibilities that have to open out for the future. It is that past now which is staying back. His function is over, his job is done, and the future or the coming or the everlasting day is what is indicated that is nearing soon. So the line has a double arthandra, double meaning, double sense. It is very rich in both the story aspect and the occult spiritual aspects connected with Savitri's work. The past receded and the future neared. Far now lay behind Madra's spacious halls. Well, he is now narrating it in the form of a storyline, although the suggestions are at a different level also simultaneously. Far now behind lay Madra's spacious halls, the white carved pillars, the cool dim alcoves, the tinged mosaic of the crystal floors, the towered pavilions, the wind-rippled pools, and gardens humming with the murmur of bees. Forgotten soon, or a pale memory. The fountain splash in the white stone-bound pool. The thoughtful noontides, brooding solemn trance, The colonnades a dream grey in the quiet eve, the slow moonrise gliding in front of night. So here we have again a double description of location and of moment. Location in terms of space, of moment in terms of time. In space, Madra, the surrounding area, the geographical surroundings of the place in the local sense, in the sense of the space. And in sense of time, we have noontide, eve and night. Why night? Because the future, the new dawn is soon going to arrive on the horizon in space and time. So the meaning is already incorporated in this sort of a geographical, temporal description by the poet himself. That is the power, that is the magic, that is charm of the mystic poetry. That in just few lines he can cover vast tracts of space and time, of ages and of realms, one after the other. That is the beauty of the mystic poetry. And this is one of the most unique examples in Savitri, where all these things are depicted immediately in one single sentence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 lines. You see, everything is covered in the 11 lines which is stated. The past is arrayed and the future neared. Now, why did it say past is arrayed and the future neared? Again, it is connected with the work of Savitri. Savitri's birth itself is a unique birth, is a purposeful birth. It is the birth in response to the powerful invocation of Ashwapati to the Divine Mother herself. And in response to that prayer of Ashwapati, she takes a mortal birth. And therefore, the poet tells us that once more that will put an earthly shape. Once more that will put on an earthly shape. Will, the supreme will, it has taken the birth again in an earthly shape. The Supreme Himself, the Divine Mother herself has come here again, once more. This has been happening through the ages, through the yugas, through cycles of time. She has been coming again and again. But now, in this particular life, this will has taken a decisive step. Something is definitely going to happen. The past is arrayed in the future near. That's the assurance of that will. Once more that will put on an earthly shape. What is she going to do? She has taken the birth, of course. At once she seemed to found a mightier race. At once she seemed to found a mightier race. Savitri is born, and even as a child, there is the assurance in her work, in her activities, in her movements, that she is going to found a mightier race here. The future is approaching. That mightier race has to arrive at once. She seemed to found a mightier race. Again, the deep mystic attempt began. This attempt of Savitri's coming here again and again is for a certain decisive action. But now something else has happened here. Something very definite, something very concrete is going to happen here. Again, the mystic deep attempt began. Now this attempt is going to bear fruit. He is going to achieve what for it has come here. It has going to have its phalashruti, its reward, the divine reward. The boon of the Supreme is going to fructify here. At once, the deep mystic attempt began. At once, she seemed found a mightier race. The past receded and the future neared. So that is the possibility of the future which is suggested here in a very, very powerful manner. Although a spatio-temporal picture is what is given to us here. At once she seemed to found a mightier race. In fact, even in her, what the poet calls, childish moments, Savitri as a babe, even as a very young girl, there was a nearness of light. There was something which was divine in her laughter, in her movement, in her joy, in her play, in her association with her friends, with her objects, with her toys, whatever was there around. Although they seemed childish in the human sense, but to the mystic eye, one could see, the mystic eye could immediately see that there is a divine light all around her, doing all these things. That is what Savitri is here now. And therefore the poet says here, left far behind were now the faces known. Left far behind were now the faces known, the happy silken babble on laughter's lips, and a close clinging clasp of intimate hands, and adoration's light in cherished eyes offered to the one sovereign of their life. All her inmates, her friends, her associates in the palace, they worshipped her because there was light around her. They could feel something in her, and therefore they offered themselves to Savitri. They became her glorious companions in that game, in that play, in that moment, in that association. Adoration's light in cherished eyes, hers were the cherished eyes, and her friends, her peer, her compatriots, they adored her. They found something very charming in her eyes. The light was there around, even in her childish moments. And they immediately felt something very unusual and got immediately attracted by that. The happy silken babble on laughter's lips. Laughter itself is now personified here. Laughter is standing as a person, and on his lips, what do you have? Babble. The way in which a child utters words. Something which looks to us meaningless, prattle of not much use, something which has not any meaning, all the same to be full of happiness, silken, soft, vivid also, very desirable also. It is in that moment that Savitri is being worshipped by our friends and compatriots. Babble is something which is uttered, which looks very meaningless. The way the child speaks something, nobody understands what it is trying to say, perhaps except its mother. She knows what it is speaking. But her friends, they were so intimate to her, so close to her, that they could grasp what she is trying to say even in her babble, in her meaningless chatter there. The happy silken babble on laughter's lips. Now here again some of the adjectives are purposeful. Happy, silken. The babble is of that kind on the lips of laughter. Why the poet is saying? Because that is the past. In Madra, as a child, she was happy, joyous, no care, nothing. Everybody was at her service. At her word, people would come and give her whatever she wanted, she demanded, she cried for. It was easily available to her. Now that happiness may not be there anymore to Savitri in the future. She has accepted a harsh life in the hermitage of staying in a forest where she will have to do household work, sweep the floor, lit the kitchen fire, prepare the food, pull the water from the well. This is what Savitri will have to do now in the future. So the happiness is now left behind. That belongs to the past. The future, the immediate future for Savitri is to accept the life of the hermitage, the ascetic's life. In fact, in the Mahabharata story, when Savitri begins staying in the hermitage after marriage, after her parents have left the place, she takes off her royal dress, her ornaments, and puts on the sannyasi's clothes, bare, minimum, lives a very harsh life. She speaks very few words. She cannot travel, cannot talk freely with anybody around here, because she has accepted now the life of a tapaswini, of an ascetic, where she has to do yoga and prepare herself to meet the challenge of death. She is engaged immediately in that task. So that happy silken babble is now over, and the immediate future which is being seen is the harsh life, the tough life of the hermitage, where she has no servants there. Her husband will get up early in the morning, pick up his instruments, go to the forest to cut woods, to collect fruit, to get vegetables, bring home. So that is the kind of life she will have to live immediately after that. In the house, she will have to do all the household work herself. She will have to look after her aged parents-in-law, her blind father-in-law, her old mother-in-law. Take due care of them. The happy silken babble on laughter's lips and the close clinging clasp of intimate hands, those hands are there now. And adoration's light in cherished eyes, offered to the one sovereign of their life. So that is gone now, that belongs to the past. And what do we have now here? We are here. Nature's primeval lowliness was here. bare ascetic life, mountains and rivers, beasts and animals, birds. It is in that surrounding she has to live here. Nature's primeval, the very beginning of nature's life, full of these activities. Here only was the voice of bird and beast. That silken babble is not there. Her friends chatting with her, that is not there. Here only was the voice of bird and beast. The ascetic's exile in the dim-souled, huge, inhuman forest, far from cheerful sound of man's blithe converse and his crowded days. The city life, the urban life, the busy life of the palace, they were no more here. What we are here? The ascetic's exile in the dim-souled, huge, inhuman forest. It is in that surrounding, in that condition, Savitri has to live at the moment here. Now, this is a picture which appears on a number of occasions in Savitri itself. The place where Savitri first met Satyavan, the meeting place is what is described here. In the same way, we can see some of these things quickly, a few of these descriptions. Why I am reading this thing is to also show the kind of a consistency which is there in the poem. At different places he is describing things, but there is a unity, there is coherence. It is the same thing which he is describing, of course in different manner, but it is not that on page 15 he is describing this place in one manner, and in the book of yoga he is describing in another manner, and in the meeting place he is describing in the third manner. It is not that. It is the same place. Even when she is meeting death, that scene of the forest, it is the same scene which is present in different places in Savitri, with the same vividness, with the same power of precision, and with more or less the same details, but each time the description adding something new, something charming, something beautiful, something rich to the whole place. So that is the beauty of Savitri. There is a unity of theme. Although the description is, so to say, repetitive, it is not really repetitive. It is enriching every time. Now, for instance, we have here, right in the beginning, when the poet is describing the issue, maybe your page 12 or 14, something there, perhaps. See how the poet has remembered everything, and the details are exactly the same. On page 15, the issue, alone amid the many faces loved. See, again the same description what we have seen earlier. Alone amid the many faces loved, aware among unknowing happy hearts, her armored spirit kept watch upon the hours, listening for a foreseen tremendous step, listening for a foreseen tremendous step, foreseen, again that unity of theme is there. In the close beauty of the inhuman voice, this is what we had here, inhuman forest. See the exactness of the description. Inhuman forest, yes, in the inhuman voice, here we got. And it continues, a combatant and silent, dreadful lists, the world unknowing, for the world she stood, No helper had she, save the strength within. There was no witness of terrestrial eyes, the gods above, and nature's soul below were the spectators of that mighty strife. What Savitri is going to meet. That is the place where Satyavan is going to die. This place where Savitri is going to live after the marriage. Around her were the austere sky-pointing hills, tall rising rainforest trees. Around her were the austere sky-pointing hills and the green, murmurous, broad, deep-thoughted woods muttered incessantly their muffled spell. A dense, magnificent, colored, self-wrapped life. A dense, magnificent, colored, self-wrapped life. See the richness of the line. Dense, magnificent, colored, self-wrapped. Life has 4 adjectives. This is a very rare incident that a noun is carrying 4 adjectives before it. You see. Dense, of course, magnificent, the thick forest, very beautiful, magnificent, imposing, majestic. Also, colored, something green, something brown, something emerald, different colors are there. Self-wrapped, they have wrapped themselves, covered themselves up. Life, draped the leaves, vivid, emerald, monotone, and set with chequers and beams, and by flowers, immured her destiny's secluded scene. That is the scene where Savitri is going to stay also. Secluded scene in that forest, in that hermitage, isolated from the life outside, the urban life, the busy life of man. Away from that. There has she grown to the stature of a spirit. It is here, in this place, she had grown to the stature of a spirit. She is going to do her yoga here and rise to the full power of her spirit to meet the challenge of death. There has she grown to the stature of her spirit. The genius of titanic silence is sleeping her soul in its wide loneliness had shown to her herself's bare reality and mated her with her environment. Its solitude greatened her human hours. With a background of the eternal and unique. See again how meaningful this description is compared with happy silken babble is over. Now she is in the company of this forest and trees and bird and beast, and she is going to rise to the full stature of a spirit. A force, a spare, direct necessity, reduce the heavy framework of man's days and his overburdening mass of outward needs to a first thin strip of simple animal wants, whatever is required, the minimum, that is what is given to her. To a first thin strip of simple animal wants and a mighty wideness of the primitive earth, the primeval loneliness, the primitive earth, this is what we have here. And a brooding multitude of patient trees. We had the same thing here earlier, brooding multitude of patient trees and the musing sapphire leisure of the sky and the solemn weight of the slowly passing months. 12 months are given to her and they are now passing slowly here. And the solemn weight of the slowly passing month had left in her deep room for thought and God. For thought and God. She is going to do her yoga here. The poet is already suggesting right in the beginning what is going to happen in this forest here. There was her drama's radiant prologue lived. This is the summary of the whole scene here. And that is what we have in the present passage also. nature's primeval loneliness. Nature's primeval loneliness was here. Here only was the voice of bird and beast, the ascetic's exile in the dim-souled, huge inhuman forest, far from cheerful sound of man's blithe converse and his crowded days. Now, see the touch of the poet as an artist, how small little details make a whole difference in the quality of poetry. Here only was the voice of bird and beast. The poet is suggesting only two kinds, bird and beast. Bird, he doesn't say birds and beasts. Bird and beast is a more powerful way of telling about all those things than birds and beasts. It becomes dilute, very meek, very small, feeble. But the moment he says bird and beast, suddenly the whole species of flying creature, of animals moving around, they get covered in that singular noun, bird and beast. So that is the poetic art. That is only a master can do. An ordinary poet would have said birds and beasts. You see. But the master says bird and beast. Poetically again this line, here only was a voice of bird and beast. We can practically say that the first foot, here only, here only, here oh. There is a stress on here and oh. That is corresponding. Only was. Pyrrhic, short. The voice, the bird and beast, ends. Short, long. So the movement or the poetry is also very appropriate to the description. Here only was the voice of bird and beast. You can see the rhythm, how it moves. The power of poetry comes out fully in the metrical connotation also. That is the creation of a master poet or a master artist also. So we have here the combination of space and time, or the present, or the past and the future, or the poetic art choosing to bring out something of a different type of poetry, which is very rare, which is possible only for one who lives in the true, authentic, real world of poetry. Somewhere high up, the overmind influence of that world is present in the expression. And that is very clear even from the simple phrases. Nature's primeval loneliness was here, here only for the voice of bird and beast, the ascetic exile and the dim-souled, huge inhuman forest, far from cheerful sound of man's blithe converse and his crowded days. Now, apart from the naturalness of the lines stopping at the end, we also have the effect of lines overflowing. The ascetic's exile in the dim-souled, huge inhuman. The line is overflowing. The line does not stop with huge. It has a tendency to run on to the next line. Huge inhuman forest, far from cheerful sound of man's blithe. Again the line is running on. Far from cheerful sound of man's blithe converse. So the effect of overflowing lines, at the same time the effect of end-stop lines is poetically trapped, is caught, seized to bring out something very unusual, very powerful, very expressive also. That is the charm of Savitri.